I found out I was in debt on a Tuesday. The kind of Tuesday that feels like a fresh page, coffee brewed right, inbox calm, air crisp with possibility. I was 23, had just landed my first full-time job in publishing, and I was ready to finally move out of my parents' house. I was proud, prepared, until the bank said no. Your credit score's been impacted by an outstanding personal loan. Nearly $42,000, the woman on the phone said, her voice tinny and clinical, as if she'd just told me my prescription was delayed. A loan. I blinked. No, that's not right. I've never taken out a loan. A pause. Keyboard clicks. It was opened in your name last year. Payments were missed. Several times. I felt the floor shift. My voice trembled. What bank? She told me. A regional branch I'd never used. My stomach twisted. I hung up with a numb, shaky, thank you, then stared at my laptop as if it might confess something. It didn't, but I had a feeling someone else would. I didn't say anything for 3 days. I watched them, my parents, my older brother Ethan, move around the house with casual ease, like everything was still intact. Dad made jokes over dinner. Mom sorted coupons at the table. Ethan came by for dinner like he always did, kissed Mom's cheek, and bragged about some new client for his flailing landscaping business. I waited and watched. By Friday, the nausea had become anger. Not hot and sharp. No, it was slow, cold, methodical, like frost forming across the surface of something once warm. That night, I walked into the living room where Mom was folding laundry, and Ethan was lounging on the couch, scrolling through his phone. I said it simply. No drama. Which, one of you opened a loan in my name? Mom froze. Ethan didn't even flinch. What are you talking about, Lily? She asked, voice thin with innocence. Ethan without looking up. I told you not to say anything to her yet. My blood ran cold. You what? I stared at him. You took out a loan in my name? Ethan finally looked at me, calm and casual. It was just temporary. You weren't using your credit. It helped keep the business afloat after the truck repairs. Mom and Dad co-signed. You used my name. Mom stepped in quickly. It wasn't malicious, sweetheart. Your family. You thought it was okay to destroy my credit without asking me? Ethan sat forward. It's not destroyed. You're being dramatic. I'm almost done paying it off. No, you're not. You missed payments. My score is trash now. I can't move out. I can't even lease an apartment. Silence. Then Ethan muttered, You still live here for free. It's not like you're on the street. That's when something inside me snapped. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I stood there, breathing through my teeth, memorizing every wrinkle of their guiltless expressions. I spent that weekend locked in my room, researching everything: credit repair, legal routes, identity theft, the loan documents. I filed for a full credit report and requested a copy of the loan application. When it arrived, I saw my forged signature. The handwriting was neat, but it wasn't mine. They hadn't even tried to hide it. I recognized Mom's loops in the cursive, the date, the week I was away visiting my college roommate in Boston. And then the kicker. They'd even listed our home landline as the applicant's contact. They didn't hide it because they didn't think it mattered. To them, I was just an asset, a number to be used, a resource. not a person. By Monday, I had a plan, but not for revenge. Not yet. First, I needed to repair what they broke, quietly, legally, while they still believed I was hurt, but helpless. I went to the police station and filed a report for fraud. I created a paper trail, spoke to a financial advisor, froze my credit, filed a dispute with the bank and flagged the loan. The bank launched a formal investigation. Mom cried when the letter arrived in the mail, formal notice of fraud review. Ethan stormed into my room that night. "What the hell, Lily? You went to the bank? You filed a report?" I didn't even look up from my computer. "Yeah, you committed fraud. You're going to ruin everything." "You already did." His nostrils flared. "You really want me to go to jail over this?" I looked up, slow. "No. I want you to feel what it's like to be robbed of your future by someone who's supposed to protect it." He stood there, stunned. I could see it. For the first time, he realized I wasn't just his little sister anymore. I wasn't the quiet one. I wasn't the easy one. I was the one who was going to make this right. With or without their permission. Stopped eating dinner with them. Not out of spite, but clarity. Every bite tasted like betrayal. Every word they said sounded like justification wrapped in guilt. I couldn't sit at that table anymore. Not while they still believed they had the right to define what family meant. They still moved through the house like nothing had happened. Dad kept humming during chores. Mom still folded my towels. Ethan had the audacity to ask me if I could help him draft a few marketing emails for his struggling business. I ignored him. I was invisible now, and they thought that meant I was retreating. They had no idea I was gathering everything. Stayed late at work more often, pretending it was overtime. In reality, I was working on two things: building my case file, applying for a new job across the country. Because I wasn't just planning on getting justice. I was planning an exit, one that didn't leave a single door open behind me. I kept every record. Screenshots of the loan statements, printouts of the forged documents, photos of the checks Ethan bragged about. I even recorded a conversation on my phone, one where Mom said, "It was for the family. You'll understand when you have your own kids." That part stung more than the loan, because I didn't just lose money. I lost trust. I lost the idea that my parents saw me as someone with a future, not just someone to use to patch theirs. 3 weeks later, the bank called me. They had completed their investigation. The voice on the other end was more formal than before. "Ms. Alden, thank you for your patience. Based on the handwriting discrepancies, IP address mismatches, and corroborating documents, we've determined that you were not the one who initiated or benefited from this loan." I swallowed. "So what happens next?" "The loan will be reclassified as fraud. The account will be removed from your credit file within 30 days. We will also begin proceedings to recover the funds from the other signatories. Meaning, my family." I didn't smile. I just whispered, "Thank you," and hung up. I went home that evening to find Mom in the kitchen, humming like always. Ethan had dropped by again. He had a new haircut and was showing Dad photos of a landscaping gig he landed. They were still pretending the storm wasn't coming, so I brought it to the dinner table. "I got a call today," I said, my voice even steady. Foreheads turned. The hum of the dishwasher was the only sound for a second. "The loan is cleared from my credit report." Mom's face froze. Ethan sat up. Wait, what does that mean? It means I'm not paying for your mistakes, Dad finally spoke, his voice low. Lily, do you know what you've done? Yes, I said. I've repaired my credit and started legal proceedings against all of you. You're taking your family to court? No, I'm holding people accountable who committed fraud. I looked directly at Ethan. Family doesn't mean immunity. Mom burst into tears. How can you do this to us? We've done everything for you. No, I've done everything for you. I went to a state school so you wouldn't have to. Co-sign private loans. I worked 2 jobs during college. I came home after graduation to help with bills. I've spent my whole life cleaning up after Ethan. He flinched. And you stole from me. The room exploded. Dad yelled. Mom begged. Ethan called me a traitor. But I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Because for the first time, I wasn't asking for justice. I was enforcing it. I turned to leave. Where are you going? Mom cried. I stopped at the door. To a place with my name on the lease, not just the loan. Then I walked out. I wasn't gone for good. Not yet. Because revenge, like healing, sometimes needs time to ferment. What they didn't know was that I had one final move left. Something. I hadn't told anyone, not even the bank. It involved a name, a trust fund, and a second loan, one they didn't know they'd signed. Ethan didn't speak to me for a week. Mom tried once, texting me long-winded messages full of emotional bartering. We're still your parents. It was a hard time. Please don't ruin your brother's future. Not one message said the word sorry or we were wrong, and that told me everything I needed to know. I moved out a few days later. My new apartment was small, barely 600 square feet, but it was mine. The lease had my name on it. My key turned, the lock. The walls were blank, clean, full of possibility. I had earned it. Not just with money, but with resilience. That night I opened a bottle of cheap red wine and sat on the hardwood floor, laptop open. There was one last file I hadn't touched yet. A loan agreement. Not the $42,000 one. That one was done. Cleared, disputed, closed. This was a second loan. One I'd found by accident while combing through our family's shared files on the old desktop computer in the den. The folder was labeled Landscaping Expansion Plan 2021. I clicked through PDFs and scanned receipts until I opened a document marked Private Agreement, Ethan. It was a legally binding contract between my parents and Ethan, drafted, using an online template, $18,000. No bank involved. No interest, just a straight-up family loan, but one line stood out. Co-signed by Lily Alden as third-party guarantor in the event of default. And below that, my name. My forged signature. Again. That's when I realized something sickening. They hadn't just stolen my credit once. They had made a habit of it. I printed the document, placed it beside the other forged loan forms, and slid them all into a manila folder labeled Evidence, Phase 2. Because I wasn't just going to take back what they stole, I was going to make sure they never stole from anyone again. The next week, I walked into a lawyer's office. Her name was Justine Moran. Sharp eyes, no nonsense, specializing in financial fraud and family abuse cases. She glanced over the documents without speaking, lips tightening just slightly. This isn't a one-off, she said finally, flipping a page. This is a pattern. I nodded. Can we do anything? She looked at me. We can do everything. What followed wasn't flashy. It was slow. Paperwork heavy. Precise. Justine helped me file a formal civil complaint not only for identity theft, but for fraudulent use of personal guarantee, emotional and financial damages, and breach of fiduciary trust. Because even without a bank involved, my name had been exploited to keep Ethan's business from collapsing. And the moment they'd listed me on that document, they'd given me leverage. Justine helped me send a formal notice to Ethan, a demand, for disclosure of all business debts, and a warning that I would be seeking restitution or liquidated assets if repayment didn't begin. He texted me that night. Ethan, are you seriously doing this? Ethan, over family, me? Yes, because real family doesn't lie and steal. Ethan, you're going to destroy everything I've worked for. Me, you already did. Mom came to my apartment 2 days later. She brought a container of lasagna and a faceful of tears. I didn't let her inside. Lily, please, she whispered. You're turning this into something it doesn't need to be. I folded my arms. I'm turning it into what it already is. Her voice cracked. We just needed help. We thought. No, I said. You didn't think at all. You just used me. She looked down, then back up. You know Ethan can't survive this. If you take legal action, he could lose the business. He has employees. Then maybe he shouldn't have used someone else's name to keep it afloat. She blinked like I'd slapped her. I didn't care. You didn't raise a fool, Mom, I said. But you raised a daughter who was too afraid to say no for too long. Then I shut the door. That weekend, I got a call from Justine. Ethan sent us a partial payment. Small, symbolic, but it proves he's acknowledging responsibility. Good, I said, though my voice was hollow. There's more, she continued. He's hired a lawyer. His company's being audited. That one hit me like cold air, because now it was all coming apart. Not because I yelled, but because I documented. I waited. I struck quietly. I didn't plan to ruin Ethan's life, but I was going to make sure that the next time he looked at a signature line, he'd remember the cost of forging mine. And this was only the beginning, because I had one more thing. In my folder, a notarized letter from our grandmother, left in a sealed envelope I'd discovered in a drawer the week I moved out, addressed to me, dated 3 years ago, and it started with, "If you're reading this, Lily, then something went wrong." The envelope had been hidden beneath a stack of old instruction manuals in a small drawer in the hallway desk. A dusty, unassuming place. The kind of spot people shove batteries, paper clips, and things they think they'll need someday, but never do. It had no stamp, no official seal. Just my name, written in my grandmother's elegant cursive. Lily, I had nearly missed it. It had been weeks since I moved out, but I'd stopped by the house one last time to collect a few things. A dusty box of childhood journals, a sketch pad I hadn't opened since high school. I wasn't even going to open that drawer, but something told me to. When I saw the letter, my breath caught. I hadn't heard Grandma's voice in 2 years. She passed away during my final year of college. She'd been the only adult in my family who truly listened. The only one who ever made me feel like I had value just for existing. She had left quietly. No will. At least that's what they'd told me. But now, I held a letter that started like this. "If you're reading this, Lily, then something went wrong. I wanted this to come to you directly, but I feared your mother or Ethan might interfere. I left something for you. A savings account I opened in your name when you were 5 years old. The bank should still have it. It's under your name only, and only you can access it. It's not a fortune, but it's enough to start something. You always had something in you that glowed. Promise me, if the world dims that light, you'll fight to protect it. With all the love I have, Grandma Ruth. My hands shook as I finished reading. Something deep inside me shattered and reformed at once. They had lied. They told me Grandma left nothing. They told me everything had been used for her funeral. That she wasn't prepared. I was in the middle of exams when she passed, and I trusted them to handle her affairs. They didn't just take my credit. They took my inheritance and hid it like it was never mine. I drove straight to the bank. My heart beat in my throat the entire drive. I had no idea if it would still be there. No idea if they'd closed it. If they'd somehow found a way to steal that too. But the moment the teller pulled up my information and said, "Yes, we have an account under that name," I nearly cried. She excused herself to get a manager. A few minutes later, a man in a gray suit invited me into a small glass office. "We don't see this often," he said with a small smile. "But this account has been locked in a kind of legacy status. The account holder, your grandmother, set it up with your name and social security number as sole beneficiary." He handed me a paper to sign. I stared at the amount listed on the balance line, $87,420. I didn't speak. I couldn't. She had believed in me. She had planned for me, protected me, in a way no one else had. I walked out of that bank a different person, not because of the money, though that would finally give me the freedom I'd long fought for, but because the truth had finally surfaced. They'd stolen my name. They tried to steal my future, and they buried my grandmother's legacy like it was an inconvenience. That night, I sent an email to my lawyer, Justine. Subject: Final leverage body. Found proof they hid inheritance. Will scan and forward documents tonight. Let's talk strategy. Lily Ethan came to my apartment 3 days later. He looked worse than I expected. Unshaven, frantic. Word had clearly spread. Maybe he'd heard from his lawyer. Maybe Mom had cried hard enough to shake something loose in him. I didn't invite him in. He stood outside my building, shifting his weight like a boy who knew the punishment was coming. "Lily," he said, voice cracking. "We didn't know. She left you that. I swear." I just looked at him. "You forged my name twice," I said quietly. "And you expect me to believe that you wouldn't steal from Grandma if you had the chance?" She didn't say anything about an account. "No," I interrupted. "Because she knew what you were." His mouth opened, then closed. I kept my tone calm. "I'm not going to scream. I'm not going to beg. I'm just going to make sure you never get to use my name, or anyone else's, to fund your failures again." He blinked, stunned. "You'd really take me to court over this?" I already did. I turned and walked inside. I didn't look back. There was one final thing I hadn't done yet. Not legal, not financial, just personal. I opened my old phone gallery and found a video Grandma had sent me a month before she passed. She was sitting in her garden, hands in the dirt, smiling at the camera. "You've got something in you, Lily," she said. "Don't let this family make you smaller than you are. If they do, remember, you can always leave the garden and plant something new." I watched that video 5 times in a row. Then I opened a new document on my computer, typed in a name, and bought the domain, www.lilyaldenmedia.com, because I wasn't just reclaiming my future. I was building one so big, they'd never be able to steal it again. I didn't rush it. The money sat in my new account for 2 full weeks before I touched it. Just knowing it was there, that it was mine, untainted, untouched, gave me a kind of peace I hadn't felt since childhood. Not relief, exactly. Just clarity. A long-held breath finally exhaled. I spent those 2 weeks doing something my family never would have expected from me. I quietly built something. No announcement. No drama. No begging for approval. Just me. At a thrifted desk in my 1-bedroom apartment, designing a future they never thought I deserved. I started with a website. Lily Alden Media wasn't just a domain name. It was a declaration. I'd always loved words. I'd edited college essays, proofed resumes, even helped classmates write applications that got them into Ivy Leagues. But I was always just helping. Now, it was business. Within days, I had polished up a portfolio, outlined pricing tiers, and filed my LLC. I registered for a tax ID, opened a business account, and paid for one thing: professional branding and a quiet ad push. No one knew it was me, until people started noticing. My first few clients were small: a poetry chapbook layout, a resume redesign, an indie novelist looking for a final proofread before self-publishing. But they left glowing reviews. I didn't post about it on my personal socials. I didn't brag. But one day, a college friend shared my site in a local Facebook group. And within a week, my inbox started filling up. I was fully booked within a month. And then the emails started arriving from people I knew. Old classmates. Distant cousins. Even a former high school English teacher. But the one that hit hardest came at 2:16 a.m. on a Thursday. Subject line: "You inspired me. I thought you should know." The message read, "Saw your story on the community board. I knew your grandmother. She always said you were the brightest one in that family. What they did to you was wrong. People are finally talking about it. Stay strong. You're making her proud." That was the first time I realized something. The story had gotten out. Not my doing. I'd been quiet, careful, but someone had posted about my legal case on the community page. Just enough detail to hint at what happened. Maybe it was an anonymous user. Maybe it was someone from Justine's office. Maybe it was one of Ethan's old clients finally connecting the dots. Whoever it was, the effect was immediate. People in town started whispering. My mother's book club friends stopped showing up. Ethan's landscaping gigs dried up. Word was spreading. Not because I wanted revenge, but because the truth makes noise when it's been silenced too long. I walked into the local cafe one morning, and the barista, a girl I used to tutor for SATs, said quietly, "We've all got your back." I blinked. "What?" She just smiled. "Everyone's tired of people like them getting away with it." She handed me my latte and didn't charge me. Later that week, Justine called with a legal update. The court's ordering Ethan to repay full damages from the co-signed agreement. He tried to settle, but they saw the repeated forgery as a pattern, the judgments going through. I said nothing for a moment. Then, quietly, "Will that mean liens?" It could. His accounts are being reviewed. If he doesn't have the money, his assets might be frozen. I thought of his truck, his business equipment, the company name plastered across those cheap lawn signs stuck in medians. I thought of how he never once said the words, "I'm sorry." That weekend, I went back to Grandma's house. The garden was overgrown now. My parents never tended to it, not like she had. The roses were choked with weeds. The fountain had dried up. I stood by the arbor and pulled out my phone. I still had the video. If they dim your light, plant something new. So I did. I rolled up my sleeves, dug my hands into the dirt, and started pulling up weeds. It wasn't for them. It was for me. For the little girl who used to sit in this garden and dream of being something more than useful. By sundown, the beds were clear. I didn't even realize my mom was watching from the back porch until I stood to stretch. She didn't say anything, just watched me, her eyes full of something that wasn't guilt and wasn't pride. It was confusion. She didn't know who I was anymore. That's when I realized she never had. And that wasn't my failure. It was hers. Back in my apartment that night, I stared at my reflection. My hands were still dirty. My shirt stained. But my eyes, they weren't tired anymore. They were sharp, focused, unapologetically mine. The invitation came from a nonprofit I hadn't heard of before. Voices Unmuted. Stories of Financial Abuse. A grassroots collective that had recently gone viral for highlighting cases where families had exploited their own. They had found my case through a legal watch list, and apparently, a few community board whispers had confirmed my name. They wanted me to speak, not anonymously, publicly. Just the idea made my chest ache. I wasn't a speaker. I was a writer, the girl behind the screen, not the girl on stage. But I said yes, quietly, calmly, because something inside me knew I was ready. The event was held in a reclaimed theater downtown. Exposed brick, folding chairs, a small podium with a single mic. The air buzzed with something real, not glamour, not performance, just truth waiting to be spoken. I stood backstage clutching my note cards, my mouth dry. The host, a woman named Trina, touched my arm gently. "You're safe here," she said. "And your story, it's going to help people feel seen." That was the moment I stopped shaking, because this wasn't just about them anymore. My family, their betrayal. This was about everyone who'd ever been used, silenced, and told to be grateful for it. When I stepped up to the mic, I scanned the room. Not big, maybe 200 people. But the front row, it made my heart stop. Ethan, sitting beside Mom. No dad. Just them. Faces unreadable, bodies stiff, arms crossed. I don't know if they came to support me or scare me into silence. But either way, I didn't flinch. I started speaking. I found out I was in debt on a Tuesday. The kind of Tuesday where you're full of hope, until someone else's actions wipe it away. I let that hang for a beat. My family took out a loan in my name, forged my signature, called it help, then blamed me for not understanding. A few people murmured. I was told to be quiet, to be grateful I still had a place to live, that I should accept it as a favor. I paused, then said, slow and clear, but silence is not gratitude, and family is not a free pass for betrayal. I told them everything, about the forged documents, the frozen credit, the second hidden loan, the letter from Grandma, the account they never told me about. The moment I stood in my own garden and realized I wasn't small anymore. When I finished, the room was still. Then, rising, a wave of applause. No pity. Just power. Validation. Solidarity. I stepped back from the mic, tears in my eyes. Not from sadness, but from a deep, stunning clarity. This was no longer about revenge. It was about reclaiming the narrative. After the event, dozens of people approached me. A woman in her 50s whispered, "My sister did the same thing to me. I thought I was alone." A college student said, "My dad ruined my credit when I was 17. I'm still paying for it." One by one, stories poured out, like water over cracks, like light in places that had only known shadows. But the most unforgettable moment, Mom and Ethan waiting outside by the parking lot. Mom looked exhausted. Older than she had months ago, Ethan didn't say anything right away. Then, "You really wanted to humiliate us in front of strangers?" I tilted my head. "I didn't say your names. You didn't have to." Mom's eyes shimmered. "Lily, people are talking. You're turning everyone against us." "No," I said calmly. "You did that all on your own. I just stopped, covering for you. They didn't follow me when I walked away. Didn't call. Didn't text." And for the first time, their silence felt like peace, not punishment. A few days later, Trina called. "You were one of the most requested speakers after the event. Would you consider doing a video interview?" I hesitated, then smiled. "Yes, let's film it in my grandmother's garden." The video interview wasn't flashy. It was shot on a single camera, natural light, no fancy filters or background music. Just me in Grandma Ruth's garden, seated on a worn wooden bench, the flowers blooming behind me like quiet witnesses. Trina asked the questions off camera, gently, like she already knew the answers, but wanted the world to hear them from my voice. I spoke plainly, about identity theft, about family manipulation, about the gaslighting that comes not just from what people say, but what they don't. I didn't cry. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. The video was posted to Voices Unmuted on a Wednesday night. By Thursday morning, it had over 28,000 views. By Friday afternoon, it had passed 100,000. I started receiving DMs from strangers. Some shared their own stories. Siblings who forged their names for credit cards, parents who drained college funds, partners who opened mortgages in secret. Others just said, "Thank you for speaking up." But not every message was kind. Some accused me of trying to destroy my family. Others, clearly from burner accounts, called me ungrateful, spoiled, dramatic. One even said, "You'll regret airing your dirty laundry. Family is everything." But what they didn't understand was this: family is everything, until they steal everything from you. Then the story hit local news. The station didn't name me, but they referenced a former resident whose legal case regarding intra-family fraud has gained national attention. They showed a blurry screenshot of the interview, just enough to make it clear. The next day, someone on Reddit connected the dots. They linked my name to the public case filing. And then, it exploded. A financial influencer on TikTok stitched the video. This is what financial abuse looks like. Not always from partners, sometimes from parents, siblings, people you're told you're supposed to trust. That post alone hit 2.1 million views. Suddenly I was getting media requests, podcasts, blogs, even a documentary crew doing a feature on financial manipulation among Gen Z and millennials. They said my case was representative of a growing, silent crisis. And for once, I said yes, not for attention, for truth. Meanwhile, Ethan's business collapsed like wet paper. By the end of the month, his business license had been revoked, not directly because of me, but because the state launched an audit following the civil suit's outcome. Unpaid taxes, false expenses. 2 employees left and filed complaints. One day, I drove past one of his former project sites. The sign was gone. The truck was gone. The yard was still half dug, abandoned. Mom called again. This time, I answered. Herbine. Voice was low, tired, defeated. People at church, they don't speak to us anymore. I stayed quiet. I know you hate me. I don't, I said calmly. I just don't trust you. A pause. You've ruined us. No, Mom, I said. You ruined yourselves when you thought using me would cost you nothing. She didn't hang up. But she didn't speak again, either. The next day, someone anonymously sent a file to Justine, my attorney. Inside, a scanned document dated 3 years ago. A handwritten note in the margin read, "You should know they planned this." It was an email printout. From Mom to Ethan, if we take out the loan in her name, she'll never know. She's too soft. We'll make her feel like we did her a favor if she finds out. Say it was to keep us afloat. She'll fold like always. Justine forwarded it to me with the subject line, "Do you want to make this public?" I stared at that question for 10 minutes. Then I wrote back, "No. Let them drown in the silence they forced me to live in." Instead, I posted one thing on my site. A blog entry, titled, "On Names and Ownership." It didn't list dates, or names, or receipts. It simply said, "I've learned that reclaiming your story doesn't always mean shouting the loudest. Sometimes it's the quiet knowing that you don't owe your abusers silence, or explanation, or even forgiveness. Sometimes it's enough to plant your own name in the ground and watch it grow back taller than they ever expected." The blog was shared more than any post I'd written before, and that night, I walked back into Grandma Ruth's garden. Was blooming. Truly blooming now. And I knew she would have been proud, not just because I'd fought, but because I'd won, on my own terms. The publishing offer came quietly. A small but respected nonfiction imprint reached out after reading my blog. The editor said my voice was surgical but poetic, which, I admit, made me laugh. I'd never thought of myself as poetic, just honest. She said they wanted to offer me a deal, a memoir focused on financial abuse within families, written in my own voice. Raw, vulnerable, empowered. I didn't say yes right away. I printed the contract, taped it above my desk. I stared at it for a week, because part of me still wondered if signing it meant I was inviting more chaos. Would Mom sue me? Would Ethan show up again? Would it all spiral back into courtrooms, articles, and late-night hate mail? But then I thought of Grandma Ruth, of the way she'd saved for me in silence, of how she'd never waited for permission to plant something beautiful. So I signed it. Not for revenge, but for record. For every person who'd ever been gaslit into calling their trauma a favor. I wrote in early mornings and late nights, between freelance deadlines, between speaking events, between quiet, meals in my quiet apartment. The words came like old bones being unearthed, fragile, then firm. Some chapters left me trembling. Others felt like wind at my back. I didn't write it with anger. I wrote it with precision. I named them, not to shame, but to clarify, to document, to free myself from the weight of unspoken things. Justine vetted every page. The legal team reviewed every line. The publisher stood behind me, firm. When the unforged name went to print, I held the galley copy in my hands for a long time. My name, my real name, embossed on the cover, not borrowed, not bent, not hidden under someone else's debt. Mine. The book launched quietly. No media circus. Just a soft release, a few podcast interviews, a local bookstore reading. I wasn't trying to go viral, but somehow it happened anyway. People called it the memoir of the decade. Not because it was glamorous, but because it was exactly what people had been too afraid to say for years. It trended on Book Talk. It got a write-up in The Atlantic. Even the morning news did a segment titled, "When Family Becomes the First Fraud." One woman's story of quiet reclamation. Ethan never reached out again. Last I heard, he moved 2 states away. His business dissolved. His reputation, too. Mom tried once. Sent a birthday card with a photo of me as a baby taped inside. No message. Just that. I didn't reply, but I kept the photo. Not because I missed her, because it reminded me how long I'd been mine. Even when they tried to convince me otherwise. I bought a house the following year. Not big, but sunlit, with space for a garden in the back. I planted white lilies and Queen Anne's lace, Grandma's favorites, and a rose bush, trimmed carefully from the one she planted decades ago, now regrown from the clippings I'd taken before leaving. I walk that garden every morning, shoes off, hands free, breathing deeply, knowing, without a doubt, no one owns my name anymore.